Welcome. It's lovely to see you all. My name is Noah Potter. I've been in the movement for, I guess, about 23 years. I grew up in the Reagan-Bush continuum. It was a while back, coming out of the real hardcore war on drugs, the Nixon resurgence. I had the pleasure of encountering LSD and psilocybin, 1990, 91. Dropped a fair amount of psychedelics myself. The first time, I believe my experience was, wow, this is what it feels like to be happy. That's cool. Wow, I could go with this. And I knew it was, so my experience was, I knew it was possible. I had a baseline, I had a standard for the potential, a different emotional state, a different perceptual state, the experience of, in a sense, having all the walls pulled away and realizing that what I'd experienced my whole life was just a series of walls closing around me, and to see beyond that, to know that there was something beyond that, was already a comforting and transformative experience. And to have that experience, I could always refer back to that in a moment of unhappiness or stress. I just want to share an anecdote. There was, again, a period of time where I was dropping psychedelics with some frequency, and my friends and I went off. We live in Pennsylvania, off to the banks of the Susquehanna River, abandoned area. We dropped some psychedelics. And at one point, I wandered away from my friends. This was in the middle of the night, and I found a freight train tracks. And I thought, wow, these freight train tracks, this is really cool. And a freight train was going by. And I thought, wow, I wonder what it looks like underneath the freight train. So, in my psychedelicized state, I walked over the train tracks, and I rolled on my back so that I could watch the edge of the train passing over my head while I was tripping, in the dark, by myself. And I thought, at some point, it was really cosmic. And at some point I thought, this is probably a bad idea. I should probably go back to my friends. And so I very carefully rolled away from the tracks, and the freight train was basically passing over my head, and safely walked back to where my friends were. And as I walked back, I thought, you know, it's really easy to get hurt doing psychedelics. That was a bad idea, and thank God I'm alive. And so I joined the movement in 1993, and decided to go to law school because I thought that might be a helpful way to change things. And I look back at that moment, and that was one of those personal moments when I thought, you know, psychedelic prohibition is probably a really bad idea because people can get really hurt. And it was a personal exposure to the idea that we need a system, we need a format for safe access, a legal access to psychedelics. In some way, shape, or form, you can debate the particular version, whether psychedelics should be available only in the context of sacraments, ceremonies, informed by spiritual guide, path, the discipline, so to speak, or whether it be only in the context of a FDA-approved pharmacotherapy or some other version. But those are details that can be worked out. The first concept is legal access, where there's quality control, where you know that you're going to be in a safe space. You don't have to worry about encountering an unfriendly person who's not going to appreciate the subtleties of the psychedelic experience. And so, as I understand it, that's the task at hand that comes out of what I personally experienced. I know we are, if I may quote myself, in a pre-psychedelic state of civilization. There was a revolutionary upsurgence, an uprising in a sense, in the late 60s, the mid to late 60s, and it was crushed. But the experience, the substances are not going away, and to the extent that they're prohibited, people just kick more substances, possibly more dangerous, out of laboratories. So it's incumbent upon humanity to make some kind of peace with these powerful substances. We're gathered here across the United Nations. The governments of the world are meeting to come to a decision that they had already reached previously, apparently, without really any interest in the input of the citizenry. But we're maybe in a historic moment here, planting the seed of another United Nations, in which the peoples of the world who share an appreciation for psychedelics, or at least share in a vision that can become clearer through a psychedelic experience, will make the demand for a new reality. They will, in a sense, make those people irrelevant, or to the extent they're not irrelevant. But we can't really expect too much from them. You can wait for them, right? Or move beyond them. And I'm happy to see you all here. This is a dream come true. In the early 90s, I never expected to see a psychedelic movement willing to take the streets and identify themselves. After 23 years, it's very gratifying to see so many comrades and colleagues. So great appreciation to the people who've organized this event, made it happen, and I hope to see you in future stops in the campaign trail.
And now I'm proud to introduce Daniel Miller of the Psychedelic Society of Brooklyn.
Hey everybody, before I start, I should just note that we wouldn't have a bicycle day today without Noah Potter. I mean, this was a collaboration of different groups, including Psymposia and MAPS, pretty much spearheaded by Psymposia, but Noah Potter was the one that insisted that we have a bicycle ride. And I don't know what the hashtag would have been without him, but it wouldn't have been Psychedelics because, so I think we should give him another round of applause. It's frankly ridiculous that I'm talking about this right now. First, I just organized and participated in a bike ride until 3 days ago. I hadn't been on a bike in a decade. There was a reason the bike ride was only like 3/4 of a mile and I was in the back. I'm also a lawyer like Noah, so it's not necessarily psychedelic activists or advocate and lawyers don't necessarily go hand in hand. And until pretty recently, you know, if you had said I would be up here talking about psychedelics, I would have said you were crazy. I wouldn't have had many nice things to say about any of the psychedelics, especially LSD. But like many of you, I had an experience and my opinion changed immediately. For me, my best friend of 20 years convinced me to do LSD. He's been fond of saying my entire life, I would tell people they were out of their depth. You're out of your depth. You don't know what you're talking about. You're out of your depth. You're not politically enlightened enough. You're out of your depth. You don't know as much as I do. And I turned to him about an hour into the trip, and I told him I'm out of my depth. And it was just a fascinating turn of events. It set the stage for an epic LSD trip in which I kind of realized that I wasn't on Team Danny. I was on Team Humanity. I felt connected to something greater than myself. It really helped me be myself. It helped me become a happier person. It helped me quit smoking. All of these different things. And the next day was like, you know what? I gotta use my skills in advocacy to tell people about it. These substances should be integrated into our society. Another anecdote, I think, just to illustrate the power of these substances, the undeniable power of these substances. So my best friend convinced me to do LSD, and then I thought it was sort of my responsibility to convince another best friend of mine to do LSD, and I just constantly harangued him about it. I bothered him about it. Not only that, but I would just talk about drugs and psychedelics all the time. Like sometimes before I went over to his apartment, he would just say, look, you come over, just don't talk to me about psychedelics. But finally, and it wasn't just because of my own advocacy, he can make up his own mind, he did LSD. And I'm sitting next to him in the park while he's tripping, and he just turns to me and he says, Danny, we gotta get everybody to do LSD. And it's just the power. Everyone has these experiences and they want to tell people about it. It's the closest thing to truth that I think I've ever found. And I've been a skeptic my entire life. The last thing I want to talk about is Psychedelics Because. It's a campaign that a bunch of groups came together to spread about a couple months ago. And what's fascinating to me is that it's psychedelics because, but it's not, there are words after because. You know, when you're growing up, your parents told you because. They didn't have any other words after because. There were no reasons. But we have reasons. We have a lot of reasons. I mean, psychedelics because these substances have been part and parcel of human civilization since we started a civilization on almost every continent on planet Earth other than Antarctica, and there are no people there. Psychedelics because, you know, Herodotus and Plato attended mysteries that might have used an LSD type of substance. Psychedelics because the science, not just the history, but the science says they're therapeutic. The science from the 50s and 60s, the science that's being conducted now at Johns Hopkins and NYU and UCLA and Imperial College London. Psychedelics because everyone here probably has a story about how psychedelics changed their life. I certainly do, and I know my friends do as well. Psychedelics because, you know, we should have the right to explore our consciousness, and it's pretty hard to do that without psychedelics. So, you know what? I'm just really happy to be here. I feel like I'm part of a community of people with similar views that care about an issue that I really, really care about. It was really nice riding my bike, not even my bike, it was someone else's bike. But it was really nice being amongst, it felt like for that 3/4 of a mile, it felt like I was amongst family. So I just like to say thank you for being here, and psychedelics because.
So what the Psychedelics Because campaign is something that recently we started with a whole bunch of different drug organizations all getting on board with this. And it's kind of the lightest side of what's going on with drugs today, with the war on drugs and the mass incarceration being the darkest, like I said earlier. But Psychedelics Because, we have a video up right now, and it's a whole bunch of people sharing why psychedelics was important to them, how it changed their own life. And if anybody wants to jump onto this social media campaign, feel free. You can check out our video. You can share it under the hashtag Psychedelics Because. We're also looking for submissions. Not only would we be happy to get your story right now and put it on film to potentially use if you give permission in the next video, you can also post your own videos online or on Facebook. Just write out why psychedelics are important for you. The reason that we think this is so important is because knowing people is what changes hearts and minds. More than the facts, more than the science. The science has been there for 50 years. The science doesn't matter. And that pains me so much as a scientist, but that's not what changes hearts and minds. I know that Ethan Nail of the Drug Policy Alliance always says that what really, as they do their research in looking at how interested you are in liberalizing marijuana laws, it's not whether you toke up or not, it's not whether you're a general libertarian, it's not all those other factors you might assume, it's knowing a medical marijuana patient. That's the thing that really convinces people that this weed thing is worth getting out there. And my biggest hope is that we'll have more cannabis for grandmothers because of this, because no joke, that's the secret. That's the lowest hanging fruit healing for everybody. It's going to take me a 600-page book to explain all of it. But it's the same thing with psychedelics because there's so many different ways these drugs can heal when used properly and when used with intention. And so if that sparks anything for anyone and they would like to join in just a 1-minute popcorn about why psychedelics matter to you, your own Psychedelics Because, we'd be happy to open up the microphone to entries like that right now.
My personal story with psychedelics is I suffered from depression for like, seems like my whole life. And it only really lifted in my 20s when I experimented with psychedelics. And then, so that kind of lifted, but I still struggled with it. In the summer of 2013, it all came back in like the course of 2 weeks, and that was crazy. And then I kind of like put my foot down and was like, okay, enough of this, we're gonna deal with this and solve it. So I convinced my parents to let me to go to Peru and drink ayahuasca. And that was an amazing experience. What followed was one of the best years of my life. Just a year filled with enthusiasm, energy, confidence, and a kind of calmness that I've never really experienced. So I wanted to offer my story as a kind of like case study, because I'm sure everybody has many stories similar to this, or if not more extreme. So, you know, psychedelics because they offered me a way out of my depression. But I also kind of want to build onto that a little bit more. to the influence that a psychedelic culture could have if we consider humanity's greatest issues, and this is a bit general, so bear with me. If we consider global warming, if we consider global poverty, global famine, corporate greed, what's the other one? But you get the idea. What's missing, or the root of all these causes, is not a lack of funds, or a lack of knowledge, or a lack of resources, or a lack of people who can do things about it. We have all that. What really is missing out of this kind of equation is that we don't have heart. And we're missing that, at least in certain areas where people can actually do things. And what these substances do is directly open us up and connect us with each other and our planet, and can directly affect that situation. So imagining a world where psychedelics are not only legal and offered as a therapeutic effort, but also as part of our culture, as ingrained in us as they used to be a long, long time ago, I think would be a very different world. So, for my humble opinion, psychedelics because they could save the world. Thank you.
That's a good one. You appreciate that one? Sure.
Great. And applause for inappropriate t-shirts, I believe are in order. All right, they went out psychedelics because they can save the world. That's a great one.